It's funny. Okay, so this is the deal. The Wikipedia page says it's a spin-off of The Good Wife and The Good Fight. But Robert King and Michelle King, the show creators, also the show creators of The Good Wife and The Good Fight, have come out specifically stating it's not a spin-off.
Wait, but it's the same actress, right? And it's the same character from the shows?
Elsbeth has appeared in all 3 shows. Yes.
And they're saying that this is not a spin-off.
But I understand it because the other 2 were dramas with a capital D, and this is for sure a comedy drama, and it is a procedural, and it's also on CBS, while the other one, I think at least The Good Fight, was a streaming show.
Right, I was going to say I've never seen an episode of The Good Fight or The Good Wife, but this is a very, very light comedy. Even though you're dealing with murders, it's in the same vein as something like Only Murders in the Building, or I would say even something like Monk.
But the format is a little bit different. Except Monk episodes, they would have sometimes where they would reveal the killer at the beginning, and then Monk would have to work to prove that the person that we already knew as an audience killed them. They didn't do that every episode. It's called a Howcatchem, and it's similar more to Columbo back in the day. Did you ever see an episode of Columbo on like TV Land?
Yeah,
really?
a couple times.
I think I've seen one episode of Columbo. What do you remember about him?
I remember I don't think he ever lost a case, right?
I think you're thinking of Matlock.
Oh,
because
that was
he
Matlock.
wasn't. Yeah, Columbo was a detective, I'm pretty sure. It's also supposed to be presented like Line of Duty. They also do How to Catch Them. Diagnosis Murder, which was the Dick Van Dyke show back in the day, but I thought that he was a doctor in that show. And yeah, it's just that inverted detective series format. This year, of course, we've done a ton of detective series. Do you want to name them?
Well, this year it would be Trackers, Monsoor, Spade. What are some other ones?
The Mandy Patinkin Show.
Death and Other Details.
Manhunt.
Yeah, well, Manhunt, I mean, was more about historical
It's a detective
fiction.
story. I mean, it just feels like we've mentioned it more than once that this is the year of the detectives.
Well, let me weigh on the Howcatchems because yes, I feel like even Law and Order episodes probably had some Howcatchems in the seasons that it's been on. But I actually that's what drew me to this show. I really like how they decided to go with the Howcatchem format because for 2 different reasons. One, the beginning scenes, which usually feature a death, are more exciting in that way as you get more information. But also, it creates more of a cat and mouse dynamic between the detective and the killers, much like kind of Beef, which I wouldn't think that I would compare to this show, but again, with the cat and mouse game that you have. But also, when it comes to procedurals or police procedurals, I have things like Ragdoll, Cannes Confidential, 911, East New York, Found, Panhandle, The Equalizer. All those that I just mentioned were ones that I had to review and were either top contenders or actually ended up on my bottom year list or bottom 5 list. But here, I actually
You made that very confusing. You said that they were top contenders for your worst ofs, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. You're
Yeah.
saying that all those shows sucked.
Yes.
To you. You're not a big fan of police procedurals.
Yes.
I just wanted to make that clear. Okay.
But by watching Elsbeth, I actually enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I was, and I think that this is probably going to be where I'm more positive about a police procedural than I have been in the past.
I also caught the first episode with you, and I saw some of the last episode, but we're mostly going to hone in on the last episode and get your thoughts on that. I do want to point out that the contrast or the weirdness of this show as a police procedural is like with Law and Order, where you tend to get like at least 6, 7, maybe even 8 regular stars in the show. In this, you have a really reduced ensemble of like 3 to 4 regulars. They have 1 big guest star each week. In the last episode, they had 2 big guest stars, but those usually fit the mold to kind of play the kind of the host of the show for that episode. And then unlike Psych or Monk or White Collar, where the FBI is or the police department is using the character's specific set of skills for help, instead Elsbeth has been assigned to oversee the New York City Department or the NYPD because of some controversial decisions. He's there under a consent decree. So she's actually like, they don't have a choice. They have to use her. And she just happens to be very good at solving mysteries.
That was the twist that was given away at the end of the first episode.
I don't think it was a twist.
She's actually looking over Captain Wagner to see if he has any, if he should be like, I don't know, brought to jail or something. What happened,
Wagner,
I feel like,
played by what's his name? Wendell Pierce.
Yes, but what happened, I think, last episode was that he was exonerated for that, and you see the fallout of it in this finale.
Someone else was caught being the actual person who was the bad cop, and so he was was vindicated, but at the same time, he's very upset with her. I do want to point out a few more weird things about the show, one of which is that the timing of it started in February of 29th, 2024. It only had 10 episodes, but we're already now at the very end of May, right?
Yeah.
And so how did that long span take? Because that's more than 10 weeks. You had March Madness, and then you had the State of the Union, which caused a hiatus, which you would think would be bad for the show. But CBS has already come out and renewed it for another season. So that's pretty
Okay.
impressive.
So already season 2.
The amount of Broadway theater actors that they got on this thing is incredible. Even the last two the last two guest stars in this episode, Andre DeShields and also Laura Benanti. Laura Benanti, also known for playing Melania Trupp on The Colbert Report a lot, but they're both very well known.
I was going to say the creators of this show obviously like theater. In the season finale, as we already said, Andre DeShields guest stars as Mateo Hart, but the first episode was all about a director of a play killing one of her students, which was very reminiscent of a film I saw at a film festival called Et Brute, in fact, or Et Tu. And that Lou Diamond Phillips character reminded me a lot of the director of the play in that first episode.
Well, that guy was played by the True Blood main character who she had worked with, Carrie Preston. So let's talk a little bit about Carrie Preston, the person who plays Elsbeth Taschioni.
Yes.
Before we talk about Taschioni's eccentric behavior, Carrie Preston is sort of a character actress that's been in a billion things that you probably wouldn't have recognized until she really broke out with the last few characters.
So I've seen some stuff with her before.
Probably. I'm not going to get into that as much as just say 4 separate things that she's most famous for. First of all, she was the barmaid in True Blood. So she had worked with Stephen, I think, Moyer before, the guy from the first episode. But before she got the role in True Blood, she had been blonde. Like she had like thousands of auditions, some very few like big successful roles, but other than that, not much. And then after she went redhead, she's gotten a lot more work. And she kind of did the same thing that Emma Stone did, right? Once she changed her hair color, she started getting roles. I think also you could put Sansa into that position.
It's weird because the redhead, they're like her having red hair, it is a character trait of hers. It adds to the quirkiness, I think, of her character.
So it does help her.
Yeah.
She's also married to Michael Emerson. And you know Michael
Who's
Emerson from Lost? He played Ben Linus.
Oh,
She
wow.
actually then went on to play his mom in that show. She has, I think, guest starred in Evil, playing his was it Evil that I think she played his love interest in that?
Sorry, she played his mom in Lost.
Yeah.
And they are married in real life.
It's funnier too because he's like almost 70 years old and she's in her like late 50s. So like the age, don't try to put it in your head for her playing his mom. It's like
Michael C. Hall when he was married to who played his sister, Jennifer Carberry, or Jennifer in
What did they got married? I didn't even know that.
And Dexter.
I forgot about that. Really? Okay. That's really creepy. Yeah. So then Michael Emerson, we most recently talked about in Fallout, where his head makes a very big appearance throughout the season. And then they actually got married in 1998. So they've known each other forever. A Hollywood couple that you wouldn't have thought of. They have a dog that they like to talk about a lot. I forgot its name. She didn't have to audition for the Elsbeth role. She actually got a call from the show's creators when they were pitching it back in like 2014 to be part, or 2013 to be part of, I think, the Good Wife series.
I feel like her character was probably the comic relief of those two shows, and therefore that's why they decided to go the route they did with this, because even though I haven't seen either show, this is probably as much a spinoff as Joey was a spinoff to Friends, where it's like there's really no connection between the two.
I would connect it to Vince Gilligan's Better Call Saul, where they were like, we're going to make it into a comedy version of Breaking Bad, but they were 100% like into the idea of calling it a spinoff or a prequel spinoff series. Then also 11 years ago, she was asked in an interview. I found this interesting. There's been a lot of talk about Elsbeth getting a spinoff series. Again, 2013. But if you had the choice, would you prefer to do a show about Arlene? That's her character from True Blood, or Elsbeth? And at the time she says, I guess if I had to pick, I would say Elsbeth, only because we haven't seen her as much as we've seen Arlene. Now, I don't know if that stayed the course over the amount of times that because she stayed on through the good fight. It would be fun to see her in more situations, conflicts, and crazy obstacles for her to overcome. I don't think we've talked about too many shows where a character played by the same person has gotten the chance after so long to then make that character their own in their own series. Because it's certainly, like you were talking about, when she was playing the role in a drama where she wasn't the main lead, she was kind of playing it for the rest of the show. She wasn't like doing her own thing. And
Well,
in this, she really gets a chance to kind of spread her wings.
you can liken it to something like Deadpool with Ryan Reynolds and how long he wanted to play that character. And whenever he did show up in the movies, like X-Men Origins, for example, that was supposed to be kind of just a dramatic superhero movie. But when he was actually finally given the Deadpool movie back in 2016, they decided to go the complete comedy route with it. And it really worked in their favor, I thought.
I agree. Let's talk about Elsbeth Taschioni now. So you compared her, I said Columbo, and you said
I was saying Monk.
Monk.
That's
Absolutely,
yeah.
because of her quirkiness. And I say Kimmy Schmidt, but smarter. Because of her innocence, her naivety. She also compared herself to Murder, She Wrote, the what's her name? I forgot what the main character's name is in that. And then Sherlock, because of her relationship in the show with the detective, right?
Mhm.
Officer, do you know her name?
It was Officer
Kaya, I think?
Kaya Blanke, I think. Is her
Blanc?
name.
Kaya
Yeah.
Blanc?
Yeah.
You didn't get the pronunciations. It didn't sound like. But yeah, that was kind of her Watson in this. So every episode, they would introduce the murder, show us who did it, and then we would kind of get this fun instance of Elsbeth with her quirkiness interviewing these people and kind of just honing in on what they did wrong while still maintaining friends with them.
Yeah, that was the strangest thing about this show is that the two episodes that I watched, it seems like the killers both always had an effect and were always not even that upset that they were being put to jail by the end of the episode. Here, though, I think that the finale did kind of stay away from the howcatchem format and
They
just
switched
did,
it up for this last
just
episode.
did a genuine whodunit mystery.
And was it a fitting finale?
I mean,
That's
if I
literally
was,
the title of the episode.
oh, okay. Well, if
She says at one point, I suppose it would be a fitting finale to my time in New York, because she's being dismissed by the
yes,
NYPD.
by Captain Wagner,
But they're
because-
allowing her to continue on this one final case.
Yeah, well, there's one final case, and then by the end of the episode, Captain Wagner, I guess, sees the fault in his ways. His character change was very strange, because for the first half of the episode, he plays completely mad at Elsbeth. He wants her gone, and then it doesn't even seem like they have that scene where they really connect, or they feel bad, or they apologize, and he randomly switches at the very end of the episode, kind of the back half of it, to like giving her own office so that she can stay in New York, because they're able to figure out that Mateo, again being Andre DeShields, is the one that actually killed this photographer Ezra Tate during this runway show.
I think it shows that it wasn't that he was being petty, but he felt legitimately betrayed by someone he considered a friend over that time for all the help that she had done for the police department. And to think that she would think that he was culpable or capable of doing something so dishonorable as to screw over his own police department. He took offense to that, but then he talked to, I think, her boss and made sure she was actually there on an assignment for the rest of the department as well. And when he confirmed that, the same guy who worked or played in Prison Break, I think in like the 2000s, he then, like you said, saw the error of his ways. I do have a little Wendell Pierce game if you want to play it.
Okay, sure.
You know, obviously he's from The Wire and he's been very politically active over his career and shown up. And again, everybody here has had some form of Broadway experience or just been in a billion TV shows. So I have a few trivia questions for you, and I want to see how many you can get right, right?
Okay.
Wendell Pierce, he was on the show Treem. Did he have to learn the trumpet, the trombone, the piano, or the triangle for his role?
Oh, okay. I would guess.
Do you want me to go over the instruments again?
Yeah.
Trumpet, trombone, piano, triangle.
I would guess he had to learn how to use the triangle.
The trombone. It's a tough one. Like, just imagine, like, because you can't really use it later on besides the show. Okay.
Yeah, and piano, you would have to. It would take a long,
Piano would
long
be great.
time.
I think we've done shows where what was the one with about the Jewish person who Logan Lerman? He had to learn the piano, didn't he?
Yeah.
Or he already knew it. All right. Wendell Pierce and Carrie Preston both attended Harvard, Juilliard, or the University of Phoenix.
Oh, I'm going to guess Harvard.
Nope, Juilliard.
Juilliard. Wow.
They're both from Juilliard.
I guess that makes sense because Juilliard has the
School of
acting school.
Acting.
Yeah.
Yeah. He played a Supreme Court justice, but which one? Thurgood Marshall, the first African American, or Clarence Thomas?
I'm gonna guess Thurgood Marshall.
Clarence
He
Thomas.
played Clarence
It
Thomas?
was, I think, a documentary that came out about the Anita Hill trial like last year.
Was he in like a fat suit or something? Like
No, he actually looks quite a lot like him back in the day, I think.
okay.
Or either that or he was just acting really well. He was once arrested for, and you have to tell me what, protesting big oil, off-roading a U-Haul through Kentucky, picking a fight with a Bernie Sanders supporter since he was pro-Hillary, or he hasn't ever actually been arrested.
I'm just gonna go with he hasn't actually ever been arrested.
It was like 3:30 in the morning, decided in 2016 to
It
pick
was
a
the Bernie
fight
Sanders.
with a Bernie Sanders supporter and start throwing punches. And yeah, he's a very big Hillary supporter.
That is ridiculous.
Clearly the most controversial thing about the dude, and I think he did like pay off his fine, and so that it was just I don't think too much less of him for it. I think he was just probably drunk. Yeah, but the finale highlights for those, it feels like a cheesy show to me.
Yes, well, it doesn't have that big a budget to it. So you have to understand what you're getting into. Beyond anything that's not mild entertainment, you're probably not going to enjoy the show too much. But it's a perfect show for, and this is kind of specific, but like if you were to get off a long plane ride and you were to just go to your hotel room, turn on the TV and it was on, you could definitely turn off your brain and enjoy it. And I think that that's the reason why it was probably made.
And part of the reason why she wasn't given, or we as an audience weren't given the killer at the beginning, was because she was in such a frazzled manner because she had been kicked off the force a little bit.
Right, she had lost
she was
some
going to
of
go
her
back
hunches.
to Chicago. I do like that it's based in New York. I really like seeing New York in these type of TV shows. Also, for anybody who's in New York when they're being filmed, it's always kind of cool to pass that, as long as it's not taking up your traffic day or whatever. But she's like working with this fashion show icon, right?
Yes.
And they decide to make it about her. And then what does she like slowly put the clues together until the very end when she realizes the photographer who was murdered had taken such a distinct photo, almost like Alfred Hitchcock, like where they blew up the photo so much that they were able to identify what?
They were able to identify that it was Mateo who was shooting a gun, and they were able to see his hand. That was the most ridiculous that the show got. I liked how it was grounded in reality, because my biggest problem with these shows are like 911 or East New York. I remember in East New York, she's like yelling at the person about to blow up an apartment, and then and instead of them just taking him out, she's like doing these crazy things that would obviously lose your job.
Or
the show,
or like Angie Tribeca, where they'll take it'll still be a comedy and it'll still be about the police, but it'll obviously not exist in a world that is even possible. Like you could literally walk outside and you'd be in a different dimension.
Right. But the thing about Elsbeth is that even though the show is very light, yeah, for the first 30 minutes, it seemed like it was able to make sense. That was the most hokey the show got, though, when they were like, we were able to see off of this girl's sunglasses, off of the reflection that it was his hand, and the way that they kept on blowing up the photo just to see, or zooming in on the photo just to see his hand with the gun was hilarious to me.
Yes, I laughed out loud more so at just the image of the guy's hand being so clearly his hand out of anybody else. He had the rings on it. It was literally a gun pointed outside the curtain.
The thing that's funny is that the first scene.
But had they been more, I guess, cheesy throughout the episode, it wouldn't have worked.
So I think them saving it. Here's the thing. The first scene, when they show the gun coming out, you don't see the hand at all. So that was just, I feel like, a goof that they did.
Oh, that's funny.
Because when you see the guy, you just see the gun and then you hear the silencer go off.
They also,
I do need to say that although I like Elsbeth's character, and I think Andre DeShields was great, and even Captain Wagner, Wendell Pierce, I thought was good. The acting in this show, like even when
it's over the top,
and when Ezra Tate has to fall down being this photographer that dies, it's not very good. Like you have to know what you're getting into in order to enjoy the show. But if you do, I think you're going to like it, because again, I don't think it's made to be this great show.
I think you're judging theater acting, which is legitimately supposed to be over the top, because like it's like Schmigadoon when they brought it. They even had Keegan-Michael Key come in and do an episode, because I think the show runner, not the show creator, the show creators wrote the first episode, and then the show runner wrote this last episode, and he also worked on Schmigadoon. But they, what was I getting at? Yeah, I think you're judging the acting in the wrong way because they still, even Tony Shalhoub has a background in Broadway, and it feels like it's sort of got the same atmosphere as Monk did. Like where the reality is consistent enough, but at the same time, everybody is kind of a goofball in a way.
I was gonna say the show reminds me of After Party too, because
Yeah,
when you show the death or you show the character and it turns into the cat and mouse game, there's also the puzzle aspect to it and how the pieces fit together and how every single detective learns something new so that they can get closer to the
yeah,
killer.
it did feel like when she was sharing the scenes with Wendell Pierce that things did get kind of serious. So to me, I think this is probably one of the better CBS shows that you'll see, like one of the better on television shows that isn't streaming anymore. Like you were talking about, it's got heart, it's feel good, and even the parts that I would normally turn away at, like her going down the walkway or the runway and solving the murder while she was like doing her strut. And also I think the song, what was it, like Make Your Own type of music
Yeah.
was playing in the background. Like those are all very, like, I think it's to her credit as an actress. Otherwise it wouldn't be sold.
I
Like
think
it
that
wouldn't
this is
work.
also a show that, in the same vein as Bookie, if you see the first episode and you enjoy it, you're probably gonna like the series. It's the thing where like your first observation, your first opinion of the show is going to be correct because I've seen the first episode and the last episode. I felt the same exact way, and that's why I'm going to give it a passing grade of a 6 out of 10. And I think that this is
I give it
definitely
higher. I
this
would
is
say
one of the better
7.5.
ones.
If
This is,
I was rating it myself, I would say 7.5. But you're the one who watched the full last episode, so 6 out of 10.
Again, a passing grade for me, especially for a show like this, I consider a success in that way.
The director of the last episode was also the director of the person who did the monkey episode in Peacemaker. Thought you might, Rosemary Rodriguez. The original plan was to have the finale at the Met Gala, but because they were having Elsbeth do all these kind of quirky stunts throughout the entire series, they thought, why not set it in something where she's doing something more than just appearing on a red carpet, even though Met Gala would be very New Yorkian, and they probably could have done, maybe they couldn't get enough famous people because you would if you would need.
Did I mention that Tim Gunn makes a random cameo appearance as himself?
Huh.
The person from Project Runway.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
It was so strange, but I enjoyed seeing him. That was one of my pros for the episode as well.
It was also funny that, like, obviously the killer was going to be the old guy, like Andy, whatever his name
They
is.
pulled
He's like 79 years
They
old.
pulled what every single movie does, which is just make the guest star or the most famous person for that episode or movie the killer.
Speaking of which, so she was on Law and Order when she was doing that time where she was just on a bunch of stuff and like not anything big, but she actually appeared on Law and Order 3 times, and usually the rule is that you can only appear as a different character after 5 years. She did 3 different times in 4 years, 3 different separate characters. Okay, well, I'll give you some future, or actually the verdict of the show, since you've already said you're giving it a 6 out of 10, has a 71% on Metacritic, a 94% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, 78% on audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 7.8 on IMDb. Mostly very positive reviews. I didn't really read any that were super negative.
So that's just the general success then.
Yes, again, it's been renewed. Robert King and Michelle King, the husband and wife show or creators, have already gotten their next project underway. Though they are going to be working with Dennis Quaid, who is going to be playing the Happy Face Killer. I think I listened to a podcast about that a long time ago that was run by his daughter, if I remember correctly, where she told about her experiences about finding out that her dad was the Happy Face Killer.
Oh, geez. Okay, so
it's a crazy story. So if
it's weird how they go from drama to comedy to what seems like it's going to be a serious dark drama, almost kind of horror-ish.
They also made Brain Dead, the show about RFK.
Previously, yeah. You mean the one that came out in like 2016, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So anything else that you want to say
there you
about
go.
the
Tony
episode?
Shalhoub. That's the connection you can make.
Yeah. So her first role, I think, was on The Tempest in like 1985, but it actually happened to be Patrick Stewart's first Broadway performance as well, which I found shocking because I thought that he like had grown up a Broadway actor or something like that. So that was cool to learn about. Anyways, good show. We both recommend it. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.